Hey, thanks for watching my video here today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you how I'm changing the brake pads on my front brakes for my 2000 Chevy Silverado. It's the 1500. It's a great truck. I love it. And simple thing to do, change these brakes. I've already looked over the rotors. The rotors look pretty good. So I'm not going to change the rotors out today, just the brake pads. But before we get started, first thing you're going to want to do when you start this type of job is make sure that you have secured your vehicle so it doesn't roll off on you. The jack that comes with this vehicle is kind of small and a little wobbly, so you got to really make sure you chock the wheels. So what I've got here is I'm actually using the chocks that came with the vehicle. When you pull the jack out, you'll notice that there's two metal brackets that hold it in place underneath that rear seat, and you can use those as wheel chocks, just like I've done here. So I've started taking the wheel apart, and I've got the wheel cover off. You see the lugs underneath there. It's a good idea before you jack up your vehicle to give those lug nuts a crank with the wrench. It's a little hard to get them started sometimes when the wheel's already in the air. So do that before you start. Just give them a quick crank. They'll go loose real lightly, and then don't take them all the way off. Just give them a little bit looseness. So in order to place the jack, what we need to do is find the rail of the vehicle here and follow that rail along up until you see this bracket. This bracket is where you need to place the jack. It's about a good arm's length underneath the vehicle. It's not right at the rocker where you would find on a car, but on the truck we're going to lift it right in there. So I'm going to get the jack in place and start cranking this thing up. So here's the jack. I've already got it started. Initially this was all the way down here, and that's a long way to travel trying to use this rod to spin it. So I just did used the finger part that was on there and got it up started. It's real close now to the actual height that it needs, so I have only just a little bit of work to do with this rod. It can be kind of hard to do the whole thing with that rod. So now I'm going to go ahead and get it in place, crank this puppy up. So the jack crank comes in several pieces. You get these bars here that you have to connect together using a little push button. You just slide those two together. There's only one part that is the actual end piece, and so the end piece kind of looks like a little hook, and that's what actually goes into the jack over here. It goes inside this space right in here, and it locks in. Then over on this end you end up with this square part, and that lines up to go with your tire iron. You have a tire iron here. At the other end of it is a little square hole. So you just match that square hole up in there, and then you get this nice crank. And it gives you the leverage you need in order to get this thing to crank up to the height that I have it at. I'm going to swing underneath here. You can see I've got it up now pretty high. I'm up on that bracket. You can see a secondary sleeve has popped up in there to give this thing some telescoping growth because it's pretty high up. And now my tire is over here spinning freely, and I know I'm ready to take it off. So I got the wheel off, and now you really got some room to work. I put this little bucket underneath here because I'm going to spray this assembly down here with some brake cleaner here, and get a lot of the dirt off of it, clean it up some. And this blue bucket here will catch all those things that drip. Back inside here, then you've got your calipers. So you've got your caliper here, and you've got your caliper bracket, and your brake pads are inside of here. You got these bolts up on top. There's one here, and it has this little rubber seal around it. Right, so that little rubber seal, that's there because this thing moves here through that bolt. That's what slides and allows the caliper to squeeze down and create pressure on the brakes. There's another one down here. For the brake job, since we're just doing brake pads, all we're going to do is take this one off. We're going to leave this one alone, and then this whole thing is just going to swing right up out of the way, and we'll take the brake pads off, put the new ones on, swing it back down, bolt it up, and we're done. Sounds simple, but it takes a little bit of elbow grease to get her done. So I'm going to spray it up some here. You just take your cleaner and just kind of spray it down. Just let all that filth and dirt come on out of there. Spin it around some. Get this other side. And you want to be pretty generous with this stuff. Get all that dirt out of there. The stuff is pretty flammable, so you don't want to be smoking or near a flame source with this. You see how fast it evaporates on there? Let me give you another shot there and watch that. You just watch that stuff. It just almost seems to disappear. Just whoosh, and there it's gone. That's a good sign that something's pretty flammable when it does that. So this stuff is very flammable. You want to be very careful with that part of it. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get the right Torx bit and start taking this thing off here. I'll tell you what size that is here in a minute. These are the basic tools you're going to need to get this thing off. First, you're going to need this Torx bit. I've got a 1/2-inch drive here. The number on it is, let's see here, T55. You can see that in the video there very good or not, but it's T55 is the mark for that. That's the right size to get in there and take that bottom fastener off. And then I brought this here because I might need a little extra leverage to get it started. It's a little tight sometimes, and it's supposed to be tight. That's good. It goes on tight, stays on. You want your brakes to stay on. And of course, you always need a persuader, no matter what you're working on. I always need a hammer. We're going to use these clamps here also then to squeeze down on the calipers and get the pistons back so that we have enough room in there for the new pads. But as we're doing that, what we need to be very careful of is make sure that we don't overflow the fluid in our brake cylinder inside here. So it's a little bit dark right now, but I've got the cap off there. You might need to start by taking some of the fluid out of there before you even start this job. It depends on how worn your brakes are and if you've ever topped off the fluid after that. So you just want to watch this, make sure it doesn't go too high. There's a level mark here. Doesn't show very good right now, but it's right about there. It says max, and that's as high as you want that fluid level to go. Just keep an eye on it as you're working here, and you don't want that thing to overflow. Alright, so loosening up this bolt is a bit of a bear. And you see I've got my socket on here. It's I've been yanking on that thing, it's hard. I finally got the brake loose, and this is how I had to do it. I got this 15/16 wrench, and it's an old trick on how you get some extra leverage, but it works really well. You take the take that end of the wrench and you just slide it over the end of that, and then that gives you this extra leverage, and then you can kind of give it a it gives you that extra strength you need to get that thing to crank. And that's what I had to do to get this thing started. Woo! She was a bear. But now I got her going. I'll take her off and I'll flip this thing around. Before I flip it around, before I take that bolt out, I'm going to crank a little bit on here on the caliper, just a bit, to squeeze down on that caliper some, loosen it up from the brake pads underneath. And I'm going to use this big, it's just for woodworking, right? This clamp over here, but my C-clamp is just a little too small to fit over this one. It's a 6-inch clamp. I think you need an 8-inch to make it fit well. But I'm just going to start it with that one so I can get it off, and then when I get it off, I'll finish it off with that one. I'll show you how that happens. Okay, so what I need to do now is use this clamp here, and I'm going to carefully put that on the back side of the cylinder part. Make sure you're not pushing on anything important back here, just the back of that head. And then this part of the clamp is going to go inside that opening. And I'm just going to squeeze down on it a little bit, and then I'm going to go up here to the higher section, and again make sure I stay clear of the lines, and do the same thing. And that's just going to push some of the fluid backwards through the system. Again, this is where you watch your cylinder up above and make sure you're not overflowing anything going out of the reservoir up there. Okay, so I got the caliper off, bolt. I've raised it up already here, and this rotates around. There's a your brake line is coming through here. It's got a flexible piece here, so there's no big deal. This can just rotate up, and now it stays rested up there. Fine. Inside here you got your brake pads. Got your outside, inside brake pads there. Your rotor in the middle should be free moving. And up here are your two cylinders. These two cylinders are what actually apply the brake pressure. Those are what we need to squeeze back, and then that's going to push the fluid back into your main reservoir. That we got to keep our eye on, make sure we're not overflowing that. sometimes these pads are a pain in the neck to get off. They've got a little hook here and a little hook up top here, and they just slide off, and then this one slides towards us. But sometimes they get stuck on there. They're kind of hard. Maybe you have to tap on these a little bit with a hammer to get them free. That's why you always got to have a little persuader around. I'm going to go ahead and take these off, and then take this metal clip off in here. You see how corroded that is. I bet all knew that. And up in here, we'll change that one out too. Crank these down here. I'll show you how to do that with the C-clamp that I have. And we're almost done. So here's a set of my new brake pads. I'm going to apply some of this grease. Came with it. There's some grease on there. I'm going to put that on the outside of the surface here, not on the brake pad surface, but on the outside. And so this will help with where it's making contact up in here and inside of this. Keep it from making a lot of weird noises and being very loud. So you can put that grease on those two, and then I tend to put a little bit of grease on these sliders here. These are the new brackets. They're going to go up inside here. The ones I took off. Keep everything nice and quiet. Alright. So before I can put the brake pads on, I got to get these rails in, these new ones. They've got these little clips, and they've got they only go on one way. With one clip, there's two clips, one on each side, and one clip is bigger than the other. So you can't get these in wrong. Just push these up in here first, and then this part here will line up with the casting that's sticking out there, and that gives us our guide rails for the brake pads. I put just a touch, a little bit of grease on there. You can't even see it hardly to let the brakes slide on there. And sometimes putting the brake pads on here can be a little bit tough. It takes a lot of patience and maybe a little persuasion, if you know what I mean, to get them on there. But you gotta be very careful. You don't want to bang on anything too hard and damage anything as you're putting it back together. Alright, I'm going to put those pads in there. I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, got both my pads on now. Trying to stay out of the light there. You see how the hook goes up over top of that, and then the bottom pad rests on this metal piece here. It's also hitting up in there. I don't know if you can angle there a little bit, you can see it. And now we're ready to swing our caliper back down. Whoop, no we're not. Look what I did. I left the cylinders out. So I got to squeeze those down, otherwise it'll never fit over this opening here. It's just too narrow compared to that. So I got to squeeze these down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this C-clamp here, and again I'm going to put the stationary part of the clamp on the back side of the cylinder, and then the part I'm going to turn in, I'm going to put it into the middle here. Let's see if I can get this thing to pull back a little bit. And then, yeah, see that just fits right up inside there. So I'm going to crank that down. It'll squeeze all the way in there and push back in the middle of the cylinder. You don't want to squeeze here on the edge like that, because it could torque your cylinder in there and cause some damage. So drive it in from the middle. Or put something across it that can push it down evenly, and then watch for this rubber boot here as this rolls. Make sure that this is rolling in properly and not getting hung up in any way. And you got to do both cylinders, this one and this one. All right, I'm going to crank those down. All right, so I got those cylinders pumped back. I rotated the caliper back down. I've inserted the bolt back in here. I had to make sure this rubber boot is seated properly in the opening around here. As you swing this down in here, make sure you pull that back and get it seated in here. It fits inside the opening on the casting, and then the bolt, just go gently slide it in. Start finger tight here. Mine's stuck here. I haven't been able to get very far with that thread at this point yet, but I'm just going to work it in the rest of the way with my Torx wrench and get it up the right torque, and then we just put the wheel back on and we're ready to roll. So I got my wheels back on, took it out for a spin, and made sure the brakes were working, and everything worked out fine. Sounds great now, no more squealing. I had this squealing going on before. That's what kind of triggered me into making this change. And anyway, thanks for watching. I hope this was informative for you, and I hope you have a great day. And I hope it's easier for you to change your brake pads than it was for me. Man, it was a little bit of a bear. Bye.